everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, money and politics reporter, Kyle Khan-Mullins. Kyle, thanks so much for joining me.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks for having me.
As you and I sit here right now, we are almost a full 2 weeks into the government shutdown, and to the ire of many Americans, Congress still gets paid during this time. However, other federal government workers do not. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers are furloughed, and others who are deemed essential are working right now but aren't collecting a paycheck. According to your reporting, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who voted against the continuing resolution to keep the government open, is doing just fine, though, financially. How much is he worth?
We're estimating that House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is worth $2 million. That's our official net worth estimate for him. And that's puts him about in the middle of the pack for the congressional leadership.
Let's talk about that pack of congressional leadership. We have Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, as well as House Speaker Mike Johnson. How does that $2 million stack up to the other three?
So he's richer. Jeffries is richer than his counterpart on the House side. This is Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He's worth about $350,000 the last time we did his net worth, which was last year. However, both of them are less wealthy than their Republican and Democratic counterparts on the Senate side. John Thune, the House Majority Leader in the Senate, is worth about $3 million, we estimate. And Chuck Schumer is the richest of all of them. He's worth about $7 million, thanks to a very well appreciated apartment in Brooklyn and some very large retirement accounts and pensions, thanks to many decades in Congress.
Hakeem Jeffries really launched onto the national stage when former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi passed the torch to him. He now leads the House Democrats, but he wasn't always a politician. Let's go back to the beginning. Talk to us about his early years.
Absolutely. Jeffries was born in Brooklyn in 1970. He had both of his parents were public servants. His dad was a substance abuse counselor. His mom was a social worker. He went to Binghamton University in upstate New York, graduated in 1992, quickly added 2 more advanced degrees to that before entering the workforce. He got a master's in public policy from Georgetown in 94, and he got a JD from NYU Law School in 1997. After clerking for a year for a federal judge, he went straight into private practice, not private practice, went straight into working for a private law firm.
Let's talk about that time as an attorney. What were his money moves then as a practicing lawyer? Because that's how he started accruing that wealth.
Absolutely. He started working for Paul Weiss. That's a white shoe law firm in New York. You may recognize it from recent headlines. Paul Weiss was one of the law firms that was targeted by Trump and signed a deal with him to provide pro bono legal services to the federal government. That's, of course, decades after Jeffries worked there. But in the meantime, Paul Weiss really set him up to build a network in New York that he could draw on for fundraising. We're going to talk a little bit about his initial political runs, and he really leaned on that network that he met in the sort of upper echelon of Manhattan and Brooklyn, legal society to raise funds for his initial political ambitions.
I want to talk about his foray into politics because there's a vast difference in paychecks between lawyer and politician. Why pivot from law to politics?
Well, we know that he was interested in politics fairly early on. Just a couple years after he graduated from law school, he was already setting up plans for a run for a state assembly seat in New York, in Brooklyn. He ran for the first time in 2000 against a 2-decade incumbent, and he only lost by 20 points, which in a primary against a 2-decade incumbent is actually not the worst showing in the world. And the Democratic Party may have seen him as a little bit of a threat because when 2002 came around, he was thinking about running in the same race again for the same assembly district seat. He found that his apartment had been drawn out of the district in the redistricting cycle that happens every 10 years. So the candidate in question that he was running against claims, of course, that he knew nothing about it, but that was, I think, a clear message from the political establishment. So that was no matter to Jeffries. He did run again in 2002, but lost, and then wasn't able to after that because of the redistricting. And so after that, he pivoted back to private practice for a while. He stayed working up with Paul Weiss, and then eventually he went over to CBS, where he was working in their in-house counsel office. He was actually pretty active in the cleanup effort after the 2004 halftime show wardrobe malfunction with Janet Jackson. He was working at CBS at the time and played a role in some of that legal maneuvering afterwards.
As you noted, he lost a few elections, but that didn't stop him. He got right back up. He started running for office again. He eventually becomes a state assembly member. Talk to us about that time and the paycheck associated with it.
Yeah, he won that seat that he'd been running for a while in 2006 after he moved back into the district, and the longtime incumbent ended up leaving the seat. We ran in an open primary and was able to win at that point. He presumably took a pretty big pay cut going from a big white shoe law firm to the state assembly. He was making about an $80,000 salary in the state assembly in 2007. However, I should note, he did supplement his income when he was in the state assembly. He also was working on the side for a personal injury law firm, and that helped him bring in some extra cash. He was in the state assembly until 2012, and that was the year he ran for a Brooklyn-based seat in Congress and won that seat. That more than doubled his salary to over $170,000 in Congress.
So let's talk about that time. Now it's 2012. He just gets elected into Congress. He then gets sworn in 2013. What were the state of his finances at that point?
Yeah, we have some financial disclosures from that era, so we kind of have a sense of what his finances looked like. He did have some savings, he and his wife, but they were mostly in retirement accounts. They didn't have a ton of liquid savings outside of that. So that salary was definitely going to come as a boost. However, he was also giving up the opportunity to be making that, a bunch of additional income on the side from the personal injury law firm. So that was presumably a give and take.
And now we get into 2015, which, according to your reporting, was a big year for him financially. Bring us to then.
Indeed. 2015 was a really big year. Even after he left this personal injury law firm in New York, he retained an interest in some of the cases that he'd worked on. And some of those cases turned out to be really big winners for the law firm. And so on 2015, we see on his financial disclosures a $1.6 million payout from several of those cases that ended up either settling or they won a big award from a jury. And so all of a sudden, his finances were changed overnight. We see him paying down some debts. We see him creating college accounts, 529 accounts for his kids. He has two sons who were approaching college age at that point. And we see him putting a lot of that money into investments, more liquid assets that are not in retirement accounts that he's going to be able to use later on.
And for the past decade, really, he has been a rising star in the Democratic Party. So can you talk to us about his ascent within the past 10 years or so, both politically and financially?
Yeah, he worked his way up in Democratic leadership until he became Nancy Pelosi's second in command. And then when Nancy Pelosi served her final term as Speaker, 2021-2022, he was the next in line. And so you may recall, the Republicans won a very narrow majority in the midterm elections of 2022. 2023 rolls around, and it takes a bunch of votes for the Republicans to get enough votes to elect Kevin McCarthy at the time as their Speaker of the House. And on the other side of the aisle, Hakeem Jeffries was the unanimous choice of House Democrats to be Speaker. Now, they didn't have a majority, so he didn't become Speaker, but that was the situation at the time. So we can assume, Democrats are hoping that they're going to be able to take back the House of Representatives in 2026. And if they can do so, Hakeem Jeffries appears to be first in line to become the Speaker.
And what's the paycheck associated with that? Because that is quite the pay bump from just regular member of Congress, then minority leader, now your House Speaker.
Yeah, regular members of Congress are paid about $174,000. When you're a House Majority Leader or Minority Leader, you get a little bit of a pay bump. So he's making a little over $190,000 right now. And then the Speaker of the House is the only member of either House of Congress that makes a little bit more than that. They make over $220,000. So that's certainly not going to be bad for his finances.
He has seen an impact to his finances in recent years. He does have two college-aged sons. How has that been impacting his bank account?
Yeah, we see over the course of, we reviewed lots of years of disclosures, and we were able to see that those 529s that he'd put a bunch of money into, when he got that big payout from the personal injury firm in 2015, those 529s start to disappear starting in 2019. They start to be drawn on in order to presumably pay for his kids' college. And they're basically gone at this point. Now, both of his kids are through college at this point, so that's certainly helpful. But we also see some other elements that show his finances might be a little bit more strained. Some of those liquid assets decline a little bit as well. They may have cashed out some of those to help pay in addition to those 529s. He does take out a home equity loan on his apartment in Brooklyn. Now, he's still got plenty of home equity to work with there. The apartment is now worth about $1.6 million, and he's nowhere near that in terms of debt. So he's still got some room to work with there. But we do see a little bit of evidence there. And then there is a student loan that he co-signed that now shows up on his disclosure as of 2024.
I know that he could, if he becomes House Speaker in 2026 and beyond, could get that pay bump that puts him above $220,000. But aside from that, you're reporting that his financial future looks bright in other ways. How so?
Yeah, Jeffries has a bright financial future besides just the potential for a promotion to Speaker. So first of all, the longer he stays in Congress, and he's in a pretty safe blue seat, so unless he loses a primary, he's probably going to be in there for a while. The longer he stays in Congress, the more valuable his pension gets. So when he retires down the line, he will have the ability, he'll be getting larger payouts from that. And then additionally, former House Speakers tend to do okay financially. Just my good example of this is former House Speaker Paul Ryan was the first House Speaker under Trump's first term. And he's now on Fox News' board and makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing that. So the position of Speaker of the House can set up politicians for a very comfortable life post-politics.
Well, Kyle, per usual, I always appreciate your reporting. Thanks so much for joining me.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks again.